we go. So how's everybody doing so far today?
Great.
Oh, good. We should have just a few more joining us in the next minute. We have
Stanley,
Paul.
Hey, Stanley.
Yes,
excuse
Paul?
me, I'll
This
be
is
able
Gil.
to stay
Can you hear
with
me?
us for about 15 minutes, and then I'm just going to quietly leave. So
That's fine. And once we have a few more people on here, we'll start up with the program. Good to, looks like Gary and Vivian worked on their tans on the ocean. This is good. So hopefully this is going to go well. Next week, we're working on, Vivian is going to be sharing. We just have to work on the time. I'm trying to work that around some work things I'm doing, and then I'll get back to all you guys on the exact day and time. And hopefully we can all join us then. And we'll have one more person as well. Let's see. And then we have joining us in just a few minutes from Turkey is where Kerri is from. So he does work in Istanbul. So Gibbs, you're a little green there.
Yeah, I can't figure that out.
There you go. There you're. Now you look right. Oh, good. So this morning, can you, thank you all for joining us. How many are doing a lot of Zoom calls and have noticed any difference in this new platform and some of the, does anybody have an advantage of the platform that you've noticed that we haven't had in our other day kind of conversations? Has this presented anything new that's been good?
I love being able to see faces, just looking up there and seeing all the faces instead of backs of heads.
That's the first time Gibbs was mentioning that the other day. You realize when somebody's doing a presentation, you're not looking just at the person, but you can see everybody's reaction to how they think what he said or she said, which is interesting sometimes when I play these back to see some of the expressions of people during the presentation. So that's been a lot of fun. Oh, good. We got a few more coming. I was hoping we get, before I just turn this over to one of the speakers today. Okay. And somebody's connecting with audio. There he is. It's Ken.
Hey,
Good morning,
Hey,
Kerri.
good morning.
Good. Well, we've got a few more people, I think, that are going to be joining us a little later. But what I'd like to do is we have two different speakers today. Amanda Ray up in Richmond, Virginia, and Kerri is in Turkey, Istanbul, right?
Yep.
So what I want to do is give them as much time as possible. And then as people join us later, we'll go back to maybe introducing ourselves. So are you ready, Kerri, to start?
I guess. How long do you want me to go?
5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll do about 5 to 10 minutes of questions to follow up so people can clarify and
Okay.
understand a little bit more about what you're doing. And I think I have it set up for you to share the screen.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I can just introduce myself as I go. Yeah. Let me find how to share my screen here. Okay. Yeah. I'm just going to introduce find where I'm at here. Okay. Where am I? Okay. Let me find this. Okay. Here. Can you see? I see that?
Yes.
That's my wife. That's my wife and I. And so we've been married 28 years, and we've been living in Turkey for 18 years now. And so I've been all kinds of things. Business owner, helped different things. We're with a faith-based organization, but my main task has been graphic design, photography, and journalism, and photojournalism. And so I can just show you a couple of, these are images like from the streets. I have some assignments, and this is during the winter in the city of Bursa. And so, on the streets, this is Turkey, and very common scene of getting your hair cut. You guys can see that, right?
Yeah, can you make it larger?
I have it full screen on my computer.
We're
I don't.
seeing,
Smaller.
change your
Okay.
screen to, yeah, we're just seeing
Okay.
we're seeing
I
the
see.
program behind it, not your actual screen. Yeah.
Okay, let me
That-
see
Yeah, that works
if
a lot
I
better.
can. Sorry about that. Anyway, just, I guess, yeah, just living here and that. I was a partner in a business, so we had a music studio, so I would shoot groups and different things. So this is shot on top of a building, and the building using softbox and a gel. I shot a lot of ballet. This is one shoot on a mountain, shooting ballet one time. This is my daughter. This is some ballet I shot this last year as an assignment. So doing a lot of different things. This is just still, capturing action and that. And then going on the streets, trying to show like concepts sometimes. And this is maybe two people coming together or somebody coming apart, and just trying to show concepts. Another street photograph, one of our cities we lived in, a man selling on the street. Here in Istanbul, to show soccer is a huge thing, in our cities. And then another kind of a street common scene, people picking up garbage. I would say 2 or 3, 4 people come by us every day. We live in the old city of Istanbul, inside the walls. Today is a huge day in the sense of the Hagia Sophia was the first time in 86 years used as a mosque today. And so I don't know if you guys have heard that in news. I didn't go and cover it. I thought of it, but I didn't know if I wanted to get involved in the rigmarole. Just scenes of Istanbul. And one thing that I did is I was covering a village, and I'm working on a book. I did a 9-year project trying to understand it's a group called the Alevi. And so I covered a village, and then this is one of their festivals. So a lot of them go to festivals and they go pray at tombs of those who went before them, their leaders, their prophets, they call them. And so let me see if I can. I'll show you some of the pictures from the village. I'm going to go into that. And so this is a book that I'm almost done with. I want to try to show kind of the life and understanding of the village. And so this is kind of introduction to the village, and this is during the harvest of sunflowers. As people are harvesting sunflowers and they lay them out to dry overnight, it's fairly dry in the summer, not a lot of rain, so they can be sure that they will dry. And then they sell them in the markets. Trying to get in families. The biggest thing is it took me like 4 years to really even for them to let me actually photograph them in the village. And so this is a family in the village that I got to know. And so they're getting their daughter ready. a lot of, when I go, they have a lot of festivals, a lot of weddings, a lot of the things that they do. So a lot of people are watching from windows. So windows are a huge thing. And then this is a festival they have every year. It's a cultural a festival and a religious festival of the founder of the village. And the Alevi come from the line of they believe in Ali as the versus Muhammad, in the sense of their one of their leaders. So they're more like towards a Shiite. This is another picture of a wedding in the village. And this is the groom. They have this tradition of throwing the groom into this watering trough. And so, and this is the leader. He's the leader of the somebody's making coffee or something. Anyway, so this is the leader praying at a wedding. The leaders are passed down through bloodline from the lineage of Muhammad and Ali. And so they pray over the bride. And then they have a school. They had a school. It closed it down. They had a school in the village up till 5th grade. And so covered that, just education, different things. So this is one of the pictures from the school, and the teachers stay in the village. And this is a religious service. Someone had died, so they bring in what they call as a sacrificed animal, and they pray over it, sing over it, and then they will kill it, and then they will eat it actually in the ceremony. And this one went from 7 at night till 4 in the morning. And also in Turkey, even though this village doesn't go to mosque, they put a mosque in every village. So they're celebrating Eid, the morning of Eid. They just go to the mosque. And then here's the portrait of the imam. And then during that time, they go out to the those who had died. They go out and they pray over at the graves. And this is one of the traditions they have, is every year during Eid, or during, I think it's called Kurban Bayram, but it's not. It's not Eid. It's the feast of when Abraham was going to sacrifice. They say Ishmael, but we use Isaac. And so, and this is a circumcision. Think of the English word for it. Circumcision ceremony. They're praying over the young boy and then they will parade him around town, and then they dance and they celebrate, and then they bring him in and they circumcise him. I really didn't want to show everything, but they allowed me into the circumcision, and so you have everybody, all the uncles and everybody watching at the same time, and the grandfather is holding the young child here. And then this is a farming village, fruit. So they do a lot of fruit farming, and so this is spring when they're cutting the trees and getting them ready for them to bud. And then more sunflowers. This is more sunflowers. Women going out to their gardens. So a lot of people have friendships, and so they go together, or they're somehow related. And then women, this is in the wintertime, learning how to embroider. And so there's a classroom, but I wanted to get a close-up of this girl, kind of what she's doing. And then bread is very important to the Middle East and to Turkey. It's very holy. And so this is women making bread. And I wanted to get a close-up of the grandmother's hands as she's kneading the bread. And then death. That was probably my hardest assignment. I was really wanting to capture a funeral, and one of the guys, I said, whenever there's a funeral, will you tell me? And so he called me one morning, there's a funeral, but he said, don't tell anybody I told you. So I show up, and then I ask for permission from the family because I knew them, and got them digging the grave and everything because the man had died in the night. And so they buried them the day after probably around noon. They'll have and so carrying the body in. They don't put the whole body in. And so, and then another portrait of a man. And a lot of these people in the village, like this man, he died of a heart attack a month and a half ago. So, and then another couple of elderly guys that are friends. And both of these guys have passed on too. And so just showing a few images and portraits. And this is all this stuff, and behind this meat is from their festival. They cut sheep, kill sheep, and then those who come, they serve it to them, and the meat and the bread. And this is before their service, man distributing tea. And this is kind of the end one of a guy, of the kids having fun in the wintertime that I, from the village. And then, let's see, I think that I just want to show you a few of my recent ones, like from our, like this is one from our just a street, and this is the breaking of the fast last year. And then the same night they had a celebration, a number of people, and they were drumming and so I covered that, and they were celebrating when Fatih Sultan came and conquered Constantinople. And so it was the 564th anniversary. And so very nationalistic, very, and there's a lot of other photographs of this. And so, and then I did an assignment for World Relief Germany on refugees. And so this is some of the local believers that are helping out to help handicapped in the capital city. And so they help handicapped families who are from Iraq, Syria, and different areas to encourage them and give them support in any way they can. And so this photograph kind of shows the mom, and the little girl on the floor to the left is handicapped. And then the other guy is helping the older daughter with her homework. And the father, he was really concerned because he needed to find work and he couldn't find work. And so I can see the weight on his shoulders in this photograph. And then another close-up of the gal. And so right now I'm also involved in the arts. And let's see, I'm not gonna go into much. Just kind of from Corona, they would come around and clean our streets. And then, buses were fairly empty. Now they're really full. Everyone's wearing masks. Just kind of on the ferries, used to be always full. They're better now. And then one of my projects, the latest project, is I'm working on a local, trying to find different people who have lived long-term in the city. And this is a family from Syria and border, and they're Orthodox Orthodox Christians, but they make brushes, wire brushes. And my desire is to help them because they've lost a lot of business. They don't have a lot of business, and I'm trying to encourage them to advertise on social media. So I've been working on a video for them just to encourage them. And so I shot this last week. This is they have a little workshop. And so I'm looking for other people in our neighborhood to do something like this to show the diversity. and the challenge I have is I don't have a big outlet for my photographs other than social media and what do you call it? Like exhibitions or things like that. And so, like the work I did. So that's pretty much it. That's a quick overview of photographs and kind of the things I've done. And yeah, and so, yeah.
Well, I'll open that up for anybody's got questions. I'm sure you do after seeing all that. That's good work. Thank you.
Hey, Kerri, thank you for your work. I appreciate that. What were some of the things that you did over the 4 years to try to gain the trust of the people in the village?
Yeah, I would just keep going back and bring my camera and drink a lot of tea. You know, I would, at first the leader said, well, where is this going to go? And I wasn't sure. And so my desire was to then, I thought, well, let's see about doing a book. And then, and I really want, and and I really wanted people to understand that not every Muslim is a radical. And so I can stop sharing. And so as I went back, I would bring them photographs that I have taken. And so I would share them with them. And so slowly, 1 or 2 people began to open up the doors for me to get into religious services. And then there was one point where I did an exhibition at the festival, but I didn't honor the leaders like I should have. I should have put big photographs out there. And then the leader got really mad at me. He says, I will never, ever let you photograph in any private setting again. And so I'm like, okay, what do I need to do here? So I was thinking, okay, Proverbs says to bring gifts. So I printed some photographs of these leaders, framed them, brought them back, and sat in the middle of the village. And it's kind of the center where the leaders sit. And you think of biblical times where it's like the leaders sit at the gates. And so they did. And I told them I really didn't want to, my intention wasn't to dishonor you. And so slowly he let me back in and continued to document. So there's ups and downs always. And I'm not an expert. I'm still trying to figure out, and I think it's one at a time, especially in a big city like Istanbul. How do I photograph different families and get in different cultures here, because it's so diverse. I have Syrian neighbors. I have Iraqi neighbors. I have ones from the Black Sea. I have ones from people that are Kurdish. I have people that are, radical or very conservative Sunni. And so so it's such a diversity. But trying to navigate all that is challenge, and sometimes it's really discouraging. So.
Will the book be in Turkish?
I would like it to be in Turkish and English. So, and it's kind of I working with a friend. It's going to be called My Journey to Understanding, and understanding these people and how I began to understand, and so looking at. It's more photographically, but the forward will be kind of my journey.
Can you talk a little bit more about what took you to Turkey? You mentioned a nonprofit, a faith-based nonprofit. You mentioned you have your family there. Can you talk a little bit more about your backstory and how you got and how you ended up in your neighborhood, etc.? Well,
I mean, I started working for a travel company here in Turkey, and so it was a liaison office, and then 9/11 hit, and the Iraq War hit, and tourism just crashed, And so, I joined in with a company that had a Turkish guy in it. And so I did all the advertising and all the stuff for the business and that. And that was in another city for about 11 years. And then I sold that part of the business. And then now I'm here in Istanbul. And so I'm working. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of patrons, if you can understand that, that help support us. So, you know, I'm not going to go too in depth into it, just because this will go places I'm not sure and so, but, you know, if we want to talk later or something.
Sure.
But my desire has always been to explore cultures and not necessarily tell stories, but I was a graphic designer, so it's like, how can I help to communicate what's going on in the world? And it's changed over the years. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
I gather you engage a lot in Turkish, and how do you find that with language being a doorway to your access to the people there?
Yeah, good. I think it's really helpful, obviously, to know the language. And so I engage in Turkish, and I was really frustrated yesterday, though. I had a 2-hour conversation with one guy, and but yet I felt like, okay, I'm not there yet. You know, we're always working on language, but I sometimes would even, like any photographer, I'd say, okay, I need somebody Turkish to come help me. Like when I was in the south near the Syrian border shooting for Tear Fund and World Relief, I did say, could I have somebody come with me just so I make sure I'm understanding? Because the people groups were Arabic speaking and Kurdish speaking and Turkish. And so, you know, sometimes you just can't understand the accent even. And so, but it really does help. And if you ever want to come to Istanbul, I'm willing to hang out with, you can come, you know, hang out with me or visit. So.
Kerri, there's a number of things I like about your work. I mean, I could speak, you know, the layering that I see in it, your composition, your access. I don't know, you know, not having a large outlet and yet you're still doing this. You and I don't know each other, but for a number of years I was editor of an international magazine, hired a fair number of photographers, and would get calls every week. And people would basically say to me, not in these exact words, but they'd say to me, well, if you will just send me overseas, I will prove to you that I'm a great photographer. You know? And my response back to them would be, show me what you can do out your own back door, and then we'll talk.
Right.
And I love this. How about, you know, you're involved in your community. Your stories are around your neighbors and proximity, and you know, I think that's beautiful. That's the favorite thing for me about your work.
Yeah, thank you. I think probably my biggest thing is that I'd love to get some feedback. I'd love to get some mentoring. I don't know if any of you have ever met Naomi Lasden. She was a photojournalism professor at Regent University in Virginia Beach. Anyway, she worked for Newsday, but anyway, she was my mentor. But I did this master's degree in photography, but never like jumped into newspapers or never jumped into a full-time photography. And I feel kind of like, oh, I'd love to have that, because there's aspects of the work that I wish I knew, and or wish I had mentorship in. I've been been a member of National Press Photographers, and I still am. But just thinking of that and thinking of this group, that I think my biggest frustration is jumping in, but yet not fully knowing, or not fully knowing how to, like, yeah, just whatever it could be. And so, and
This
that's
is a good
probably
group
one of,
for this.
yeah, probably one of my
is,
needs.
Within the group, I'm sitting here looking at the screen and going, there are 5 or 6 people who teach internationally in the group and teach regularly, from Billy and Gary and Bill Bangham and Ken Touchton, and I think Greg has done it, as well as Gibbs. All of them have been speakers and teach, and all of them been mentored, but also love to mentor. So I'm sure this is a group that anybody you reach out to, they'd love to help you.
Okay.
Hey, Kerri, I really enjoyed your work, and I was telling Stanley the other day that I think it was back in 1969, so I'm an old guy. We had a foreign exchange student from Istanbul for a year, and he taught us a lot about his culture. We're getting feedback now, but honestly, visually, we were kind of left wanting to know what it was like there. And so you've actually given me more information than I ever had from Tamer. So thank you so much for sharing your work.
Yeah, those are the type of things. I think as we come into a country, the eye candy is huge. We know, oh, this is so new. I've been here 18 years and things aren't new anymore. And so that's good to hear. Good to hear.
Your city is one of my favorite in the world. We had a media team there at one point in time, and I never got over the thrill of taking the taxi between Europe and Asia. You just I just thought that was really special. So
was Jonathan Henderson part of that team at one point?
Do you know Jonathan?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Jonathan and I connected quite a bit.
Okay, good. Yeah. Matt Jones, did you know Matt?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you for sharing everything, Kerri. I was going to switch this over to Amanda in about 2 seconds. Just want to be sure everybody, when they're presenting, go ahead and mute yourself so we don't get feedback and stuff in the background. And Amanda, go ahead and share your screen and tell us what you're doing.
Thanks. Now let me go ahead and share. All right. Well, first, thanks for having me share. I kind of just took a bit of a sampling. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Is it full? Like,
yes.
Okay. Somehow I can't see you guys anymore, but that's okay. So I kind of just took a sampling from a little bit of the work that I've kind of worked on over the past several years. This currently I'm doing freelance photography, and also I'm a photography teacher at a local high school here in right outside of Richmond, teaching photography. So that's kind of what I'm currently doing. This is one of the first projects or stories that I worked on. It's in Maine. I wanted to do a story on lobster fishermen, and so this is off the coast of Harrington, Maine. This is Dan and Norma. They're a husband and wife, setting out, early before the sun, around 3:30, 4 a.m. on the water. It's one of the major ports, lobster fishing ports in Maine, which is kind of ironic because it's actually quite tiny. They've been fishing together for their whole married life, over 10 years, and both of them come from a family of lobster fishermen. So both of their families have always been lobster fishermen in this area. So this is just a few pictures from that project story that I did. And then kind of moving on, one of the next projects that I worked on was out in Arizona on the Navajo reservation. There is a church out there called Covenant of Faith Church, and every year they do a week-long event. It's called Healing of the Nations. It's kind of like a bike rally, camp meeting type event where they have speakers from all over come and do a couple services a day, and then they do outreaches to the local natives there. The church is run by Navajo. This is the pastor, actually. The last picture, that's Elson Bennett. He's a pastor of the church. And so these are just just 2 images from that project that I did. Then kind of moving forward, I wanted to do kind of a series on worship, and I haven't really delved too much into that, but these are just a few images from Israel, which is such an interesting place because, you know, it's probably the most holy place on the planet. There's the 3 major religions find it holy, you know, for different and similar reasons. So this is just a few images kind of highlighting those different religions. So this is, you know, Muslim. This is in Akko, which is interesting because Akko is similar to Jerusalem. It's just much, much smaller. It has an old city and a new city. And a lot of places in Israel, you're not really going to find Muslims, Christians, Jewish people dwelling together or living together. But Akko is unique because you do find that. So while I was here, you could see, you know, Jewish people, Muslim people, Christian people, Arab Christians kind of all living together and working together, which is pretty refreshing to see. This is not in Akko anymore. This is in Jerusalem at Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And then, of course, the Western Wall. This is very late, around 1 a.m., which is quite interesting that you'll find people here pretty much 24/7. And when it becomes late like this, that's when all the tourists are gone, and it becomes quite a different scene than during the day. So moving forward to sticking with Jewish culture, this is in Richmond. It's at a Messianic synagogue around Hanukkah. So this is a Hanukkah celebration at the synagogue. Oops, sorry. And this is the same, you know, at the synagogue as well, same Messianic synagogue in Richmond. This is the Simchat Torah celebration, which is every year part of the High Holy Days when they dance with the Torah and rejoice over the Word of God. And Richmond is, you know, a place of many protests, especially recently. This is not so recent. This was about a year ago. But there was two protests kind of back to back that this one was a pro-life protest. And then just a couple days before that actually was a Red for Ed protest, which was a demonstration for funding for schools. So in the same location, you know, 2 different causes. More recently, I've really started to enjoy photographing animals, specifically horses and pets. This is one of the first horse events that I photographed. It was a polo match at UVA, the University of Virginia, where they every year they have a 4-day-long tournament, a women's handicap tournament, where they have, you know, 4 days of matches. This past year, UVA won. This particular day that I photographed was interesting because it was so brutally hot out, and all the matches were supposed to start around 4, but they didn't actually start. They kept postponing it because it was so hot, and they didn't get started until about 7 p.m. So they kind of went a little bit late into the night. And then these next few images are the most recent projects that I've been working on, that I started working on last summer. It started with an idea to document language, culture, and traditions of Native communities. I did still images as well as interviews. So I have video interviews with the Native people as well. And so I started with the Navajo, since this is going to be kind of an ongoing project that I'm going to continue doing hopefully over the next several years. So since I already knew people out in Arizona on the Navajo reservation, I kind of started there. So this is mainly the idea was to document their stories, people's stories, especially since the elder generations are getting older and the younger generations are getting older, and the statistics specifically of the Navajo with their language is, I think elementary school students, only 1 out of every 1,000 elementary school students know now how to speak Navajo fluently. And so just in interviewing them, you kind of see that there's been a very big shift and change in the culture and in, the upbringing of the kids. And I wanted to kind of document that before things continue to rapidly change. So this is Sandra. She lives in Arizona near Tuba City. And as I was photographing and going through my images, I realized that something I thought was interesting that I might kind of look into in the future is actually the job situations and the employment opportunities for the people that live on the reservation, because they're actually quite slim. A lot of people, like Sandra, the first image, she had to leave the reservation to get a job that paid really well, and she was working in a different state for a while. She started, kind of on the low tier, then she eventually learned how to be a pipe fitter, and then she was doing pipe fitting for a construction company, and she got hurt, and then she and her brother was working with her too. They both got injured, and they ended up having to go back home, and now they live together right next to their parents with her and her 2 children. And then this last image was at the dinosaur tracks near Tuba City, where these particular kids are the grandchildren of a lady named Bertha, who goes there every single day. And a large portion of what people do to make money there is to sell the arts and crafts that they make, like the Navajo rugs and the jewelry. And this is a particular tourist attraction. And so they kind of rely on tourists for a lot of their income. And especially now with no one touring or really even being allowed to go there with the coronavirus, it's kind of taken a toll on them. And some of the people I know started selling their bracelets and rugs on Facebook and social media. This is another family in New Mexico, because the reservation is so big, it spans through 3 of the states. And so they have a cattle farm that their family owns. One of the other interesting things I found out there was that a large portion of the Navajo I met were Christian. This is Lawrence and his wife. He's an assistant pastor at the A Baptist Church in Tuba City. And this is Lorraine. She is one of a grandmother out there, a great grandmother actually. And so she was not exactly sure how old she is. She was given two birthdays to kind of choose from. Of course, she chose the younger one. Everyone thinks she's probably more like 100 or over 100, but according to her, she's 95. And this is an example. So Lorraine only speaks Navajo. She doesn't speak English, yet a lot of her great-great-grandchildren don't speak Navajo, so they can't talk to each other directly. And then the last final image that I have here is interesting because it's a teepee, right? And in this image, they're doing an all-night ceremony. This is part of the Navajo church, which has its roots in kind of traditional religious views of religious ceremonies of the Navajo people. And it kind of spans through different tribes too. It's not just Navajo, it's other native tribes as well. And if you notice that they're in a teepee, teepees are not traditionally Navajo dwellings, hogans are, but I've seen while I was there a lot of people using teepees because of the ease of taking it up, taking it down, moving it from place to place. And so what they'll do is they'll drive out to where the Plains Indians are and purchase the teepees from them and then bring them back to Arizona, New Mexico. This was in New Mexico, this particular all-night ceremony. So this was an education way ceremony where there was a young boy who was having kind of some trouble in school, and he was going to get ready to start school again in a couple of weeks. And so they wanted to do a ceremony to pray for him. So it was like an all-night prayer ceremony, started at sundown and went until about 10 o'clock in the morning in this teepee. So just kind of see the influence of different tribes, and you'll see influences of that. And one thing that kind of led me to also that I kind of want to look into it, kind of in the future and start working on kind of where I am is the tribes on the Eastern Coast, and kind of work with some of them to do stories, because I want to prolong this to do a bunch of different tribes, not just the Navajo. But when I was talking to somebody who was part of one of the Mattaponi tribes last summer, it was interesting. He was saying that because there's been such an influence from the Western tribes, because they're more prominent, they're bigger, a lot of the traditions of the Eastern tribes have been lost because of the influence of the Western tribes. So a lot of what they do or what they think of as native isn't actually native to them. It kind of like came to them from an influence from the Western tribes. And so they're trying to kind of make this push to go back to what some of their traditions were, and so that they won't be lost. And so that's something that I want to kind of look into in the future for working on. That's it.
Thanks for sharing. I have a quick question. In terms of your audience for these stories, who are they, and what is it that you're trying to, why does the audience need to know about the Navajo, for example, and like, who are they, and what are you trying, what is the underlying story that you're trying to communicate to help them know more about?
That's something that I've kind of been working through. Pretty much all of these have been personal projects. And so I've been kind of trying to think about exactly what you just asked and exactly who my audience is. Partially what I'm doing with the Navajo is these are the still images, the interviews that I've taken, I'm recording and then sending back to the people so that they have them to give to their future generations. I also wanted to kind of educate people as far as, because a lot of people that I talk to don't really know anything about the natives that live here. And what was surprising is some of the natives I spoke to while I was there, that there are people who buy stuff from their bead stands that have no idea that they're even on Navajo land or on the reservation. And so as of right now, my audience is just whoever sees my work based on like my website and social media. That's kind of at the moment where my platform is. I might eventually one day try to do a book, but.
Speaking of social media, can we get social, like Instagram for both the speakers so we can follow?
Mm-hmm.
Can you put it up in the chat? Just type in your Instagram.
You too, Kerri. Thank you both.
Ken, didn't you cover the Navajo yourself?
Yeah, I spent a number of years out west in the Dakotas and Montana, working with several different tribes out there. And it was really interesting because this was back in the 70s and the 80s, and there really weren't any jobs out there in those decades. And but the tribes continued to educate their children and to try to teach them their cultural heritage. And I walked away feeling like there was really a hidden story there. But it really takes a long time to break into their culture, so they trust you enough so that you can really get in close.
Mm-hmm.
So Amanda, if you looks like you're getting in closer and closer and closer, I would say honestly hang in there, and continue to push forward, because that's where you'll get your most powerful images.
Thank you.
Amanda, I was able to go with an Escapi in the northern part of Canada and do a story for them. And a lot of it was around Bible translation. The translator who had been working there had been there for over 20 years. They had schools in place for language development and stuff. You can find a lot of information about language groups on the Ethnologue. I don't know if you're aware of that. There's a mapping of all the languages and the strength of their language. And so you can always look at that up, and you find out how it's being used. And one of the biggest things you always look at is how the young people are using it. Are the young children using it? Is it a viable language? Because if you don't pass it on, it's not being used downwards. So it's really important thing. And also you see also that cultures do adopt. They're always changing. They're dynamic, right? And so this whole thing of taking things from other places and moving, so they're always moving. So it's actually a good thing that what you're doing in terms of, and we've seen where people use photography also to really elevate their self-worth, to see themselves. It's very common that minority language groups, which Wycliffe, that's what our main ministry is with, don't view themselves very highly. And so sometimes it can help to bring up a lot of their issues of their own pride and self-identity, which is helpful. But really love your images, really diverse, beautiful composition. I love the way you've used light and moved around outside, and that very, very nice work. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. What was I didn't catch what you said about the languages, where to
But that's called the Ethnologue. You just look it up. If you look up Navajo, and the Ethnologue will give you actually all the languages. We map all the languages of the earth. All your statistics on language groups and language use comes from basically Wycliffe or SIL. And so that's what our main role is. We have people actually roam the earth surveying languages that are very diverse in very difficult access places in the world. So yeah.
Awesome, thank
Hey,
you.
Amanda, I really like your images. One of the things that came to mind when you were showing the shot of the woman who speaks Navajo exclusively was, and I don't know if I can explain this right, but the question that came into my mind is, how many of those people are they quite common, those who only speak Navajo? And then the other question that came to mind too was, is it disappearing? Is the use of Navajo, the native language, disappearing in the culture? That might be an interesting, I'm not saying do it, but I'm just saying that might be an interesting angle to pursue. That disappearance of the native language.
Yeah, for sure. I know that out of all of the tribes, I feel like the Navajo are one of the largest, and they have their own school system, and they're really trying hard to bring the language back so that it doesn't die. So they really are making a big push. I spent quite a bit of time while I was there at the Department of Dene Education with the head, I forget what his title is, but with a couple of the people there, and they've been really trying to push that. One thing that I found was interesting is that because largely it's because there's really, this generation in their like 80s and 90s, and most of them only speak Navajo. And then the generation under them were the generations that were sent to boarding schools. And so they're, they grew up learning Navajo, knowing Navajo, but they couldn't use it, while they were in school. And so then according to them, you know, the English, the white man's language, was what they needed to teach their children, and so that their children could get by in today's world. And so they didn't really teach them Navajo, but now that's the generations that are having kids, and so they can't teach them Navajo because they don't know it. And so that's kind of like, we see the effects of the boarding schools really taking effect now, you know, even though they were years ago. And so it's kind of an interesting thing.
And if I could just add, just even last week, this is an interesting coincidence, but I reconnected with a Kiowa friend of mine who I used to play a lot of tennis with when we lived in Texas. He's now an elder, but you know, that just came to mind when you were talking about that, is being able to connect somehow eventually with an elder, because that elder has so much wisdom, as you probably know, and also access along with that wisdom.
I think there's an interesting thing that some of you guys it's interesting to me, and I'm just curious how many other people are noticing the difference. Like Kerri's living in a culture and covering it, and taking 4 years to get to know some people to get access. But he's also working really hard to have the access be on the first question that people are asking: where are they going to be used? Right. And I think the one thing I'm trying to think is, because we have a good number of people here new in the profession, to me, and I think there are a few people here, I won't call them out, that can talk about how important that audience drives your ability to get access. Because if you're talking to people and they're going, where are you using it, and you don't know, and you're not able to talk about it, you're basically can come off as somebody who's not really doing something for others, but doing something for yourself. And I think it's super important to have some way that you're serving others. And I thought Joanna made a good comment. She made a comment about, it was interesting, Alan talking about how helping people see their own worth. Even that could be possible if you're giving things back and you do a show that you give to the community. But are there some people here who can talk about teaching? Billy, for example, Weeks, how do you teach people about doing personal projects and telling them who's going to see this? You know, your students are out there, they can say they're doing it for class, but how important is your audience for the people you're photographing to get access?
Well, I think it's the third part of the equation, isn't it? I mean, in every photograph, there's you, there's me, and then there's the people who understand it or should understand it. And I think it's incredibly important. You know, I personally believe that the still photograph is the strongest communication element in the world, and I just don't think I'm going to change my thinking on that. And if we are doing great work, and we've seen great work today from both Kerri and Amanda, outstanding work actually, I think it's really important that we share that communication with others, because we are connecting people to people, and that's kind of valuable to us. One of the great things we have today is we have social media, and social media can be an outlet. I tend to require my students to write down. They have to do budgets before they do stories. They have to pitch an idea, then they have to come back and pitch a budget. They pitch an idea, okay, I'll go along with it. They have to go do the research, and then they have to come back and pitch why that story is important, who are the main people, the main subjects in the story, what are the 4 or 5 questions that you're going to answer with this collection of images and words in most cases. And just like I used to do at the newspaper when I was a director, many times they have a great idea, but they don't have a story, they don't have an audience, they don't have a purpose. If you don't have a purpose, then you've got a picture, and a picture is not always the best thing, because a picture can do damage. And I'm really saying a picture without purpose can do damage, not just a picture. But you got to really kind of think it through a little bit. But So I don't know if I quite got to your question, Stanley, but that's kind of where my thinking is on it.
There are two others I'd love to get their comments on, Greg Thompson and Gary Chapman. Gary does a lot of shooting for all different kinds of groups. And then Greg, you've actually directed and have people proposing things. Either one of you want to chime in on how important it is, your audience and purpose? You're both muted.
Go first, Gary.
Vivian wants to say something. What?
Okay. The kind of work that we're involved in, we're on assignment, so we already have a purpose. So that's different from personal projects. But for example, the personal project that Gary was doing in Pakistan, that was a personal project. I got, and we'll talk a little bit about this next week, how I got involved in it. And then we were able to pitch it to CNN, and it was published. So, you know, that's been our experience. Is normally it's on assignment, so we already have a purpose. But you can turn a personal project. I mean, you always shoot with a purpose, right? You're always looking. The story has a purpose. So that's one thing that we did, was that personal project had a purpose. We wanted to talk about the persecuted. Hardly anybody, I didn't even know that there was this group of Christians and how they lived in Pakistan. So as we were doing the story, I was learning in this personal project, and then it got published. So that's been our experience.
Yeah, and a lot of we don't do that many personal projects, like she said. We're more on assignment, and that does give us validity with the people we're working with, because they know the organization we're working with. So that is the purpose, like she said.
And they want us to be there. So the door's already open.
I'll get philosophical a little bit and take us up about 10,000 feet on this. I have found in my life as a follower of Jesus, whether I'm a writer, photographer, or whatever, or whether just living my life, that if I can get the focus off of I or me and onto others, onto either the people I'm trying to document their story or the audience I'm trying to document it for, that everything's better when I do that. And so I try, and I made this mistake as a young journalist, and one of the big mistakes I see among particularly enthusiastic young photographers, the kind of people who would tell Bill Bingham, hey, just send me overseas and I'll show you what I can do. They're basically just wanting to go overseas in many cases. So I find that, and I was a defender here when I was a young journalist, I view it as my story, my thing that I want to do. And anytime that happens, that means I'm not focusing on the audience. I'm not focusing on the subject. I'm focusing on the last person I should be focusing on, and that's me. So I find that it's really important when we're interacting with people, and when we're, particularly when we're trying to tell their story, not our story, it's incredibly important that we focus on them and understand where they're coming from, number one. So I wanted to get a little philosophical there, because once you take the I and the me out of it, and then sometimes you'll be on assignment and you'll have a collection of images, like Gary and Vivian said, but you'll wind up pitching them somewhere else and they'll get used. Other times I might do 3 or 4 assignments in Japan, but I'm also, while I'm there, I'm shooting other images and I'm creating different things, and suddenly I have a personal project kind of showing something about Japan, kind of like Kerri's done with Istanbul. So so the whole personal project, I showed minor league baseball when I was here a few weeks ago. Well, that's a personal interest of mine, but at the same time, a lot of those I shot while I was on assignment for Chick-fil-A. Now, I created the assignment, but but still, I was on assignment, and it was Chick-fil-A Access as a sponsor of some of those teams that got me in the clubhouse and in the dugout and so forth. So I think it's a slippery slope, and that's why I think you got to start with. And if anyone ever comes to me and tries to pitch, whether they're a marketing executive or whether they're someone wanting to do work for me, pitch material, the first thing I want to know is, okay, who's the audience? What are you trying to, who's going to see this, and how do you want them to react to this? Do you want them to feel good? Do you want them to get angry? Do you want them to give money? Do you want them to call an 800 number? What do you want them to do? And a lot of people, particularly in corporate life, they have no clue who their audience is. They just want me to do something for them. And so knowing the audience, and I have a saying that Stanley's probably sick of, but I tell other senior business executives, and I've worked with IBM, Walmart, Coca-Cola, Home Depot, just pretty much all of them. And I've seen this problem everywhere about not really understanding your audience and not really knowing why you're doing what you're doing other than I just want to do it. And, when the ship misses the harbor, it's never the harbor's fault. But we usually as human beings, we take an inside out approach to our work and our life and everything, saying, okay, this is something I want to do and I want to do it out. And what I try to teach, particularly the young people I work with, my marketing executives, the CEOs, other people I work with, is take an outside in approach. Find out where your audience is, how they feel, where they are, where are they going to be, where do they want to be, what are their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Find out where the harbor is, and then you can then maneuver the ship around to make sure it gets in the harbor. I've said in meetings where people say, well, I want to do a magazine, or I want to do a TV ad. And I'll say, okay, why do you want to do that? Well, I think a TV ad is cool. Well, and finally I would tell people, I'd say, look, I've done TV ads, I've done photographs, I've done magazines, I've done websites. Mostly this is not because I'm good, it's because I'm old. And I said, look, I don't care what you do. And I do this to be deliberately provocative. I said, I don't frankly care what we do for you. And they look at me like in horror. And I said, I couldn't care less what we do for you. We can do all of those, it'll all be excellent. And frankly, my vote, and actually your vote, don't even matter. Is what does the audience want? What's going to connect with them? What's going to move the needle in some way with the audience? Either move their heart or move their purchasing habits or whatever. And I tell people I learn more about management and communications from being a parent, particularly of young teenagers, than anything you can ever learn in journalism school, communication school, Harvard MBA, whatever, because I can be talking all day long to my 18-month-old granddaughter. But if I'm not doing it in such a way that connects with her, then I'm just wasting my breath and her time. So I wanted to get a little philosophical on the whole audience thing, because I think we sometimes hide, and I've done this, I'm not making any accusing up except on me, we hide our own desires in the greater view of I want to do mission, I want to do this, I want to do that. When the fact of the matter is I just want to do this. And so I'm then trying to come around and clothe it with mission and purpose and so forth. So I think that's something we got to really focus on. And it's really hard to do in communications, I've found. So I don't know if that helps anything or not, but it's Stanley, unfortunately, you asked Stanley. Stanley's heard this speech a few hundred times.
Okay, also, we're posting on the chat a podcast we've been listening to is called Ethical Storytelling, and it speaks to this very much so.
And more, and a lot more.
Bill,
Yeah,
can I ask you a question, Bill, that kind of dovetails on this? You used to send out a letter to people, and such that Jim Veneman used to read it to all his classes. What was the gist of that letter when people wanted to come and work for you? Or
oh, gee, which one, Stanley? I don't know. That's been so far in the past. I don't remember really. To be honest.
Okay, that's fine.
I would like to pull back a little bit I think what's been said about audience, obviously, is very important. You know, when I would view portfolios, a lot of times I would see work from different photographers would send it in, and it was obvious they'd never looked at the magazine I was editing. I had a guy send in, here was a missions organization, and his portfolio was nudes. You know, that was probably the most extreme one, but you know, there was others that hit at that same level. The photographers that I worked with and had some responsibility for, I would always encourage them to do personal projects. And often that was, as a matter of fact, most of the time that was without an understanding of who the audience would be. It was an opportunity for them to explore their craft in new ways, that they were not constrained by the, you know, the demands of the audience, the demands of the publication that they were working for. This was for them, and there's nothing wrong with that. And matter of fact, the irony of that was oftentimes those personal projects became something that we wanted to publish, because they pointed out oftentimes something that we needed to be doing but weren't doing. And they were an outsider's look into the inside of an organization, perhaps, or at least a magazine. And I found a lot of value in encouraging. Matter of fact, I even insisted on it later on in my career, that everyone have a personal project they were involved with.
I'd just like to share one little story. I've been in Papua New Guinea for 16 years, and when I was there, I met a lady by the name of Susan Turner. She's been a photographer in the country for years. She came there to work for the oil companies that were there developing, and basically was a staff photographer for them. But she stayed after her assignment there, and because she really loved the people, and she has made relationships with people in those communities and continually gone back there. I think she's been doing this for over 30 years. So you can imagine Papua New Guinea had only first contact with people starting about 1930s, people into the highlands. So its development path is extremely quick. But the National Archives, the National Museum in Papua New Guinea, has been bought a lot of her photos because of the kind of quality of imagery she's done. It's brought a great deal of awareness to the different people groups, and she's done it on a basis of being friends with the people that she's with, really at a friendship level, and to develop then, not only that, to follow some of these families as they've grown and as life has changed. So she's done this a long-term project. So I look at that, and a lot of her time she doesn't know actually where she's going to put this material, but it's just a passion, but it's done for the benefit of the people that she's built these relationships with. So I think there is a place for it. I think it's just, you have to be, again, I think I like some of the comments about getting out of yourself and trying to bring awareness to the world. It's just, you know, we're so suspicious of every different group around us, right? And I think we're always looking for those commonality traits of, you know, you love your kids, we love our kids. You know, you play with your kids, we play with our kids. We, you know, all those commonalities of we have to provide for your income, we do the same. And showing those intersections of society and that brings awareness about our commonality and under God. And I think those are great. I think that's some of the things I see in a lot of the images that people have shown here, the amazing relationships to one another. And so, yeah, so I think both those things are good.
Yeah, it's and I agree with everything you guys are saying. The relationship part is really important. And when I was with the AP in my 20s, I'm embarrassed to say I was insufferable. I was just, I was convinced that we, you know, First Amendment, guardian of truth, arbiter of truth, guardian of the First Amendment. I was just insufferable. And I thought it was all about me. I was not a follower of Jesus, by the way, and it was all about the picture or the story or everything. And as a result, and Stanley has mentored me through the years, as a result, I sometimes missed the context of what was going on around me. So now, and I'm sure this has happened with Gary and Bill and Stanley and stuff, you go into some of these villages now, I don't remember where I was, whether I was in Haiti or somewhere, and you're in these little villages, and you're taking pictures of people, and it's their family. You're taking a family portrait of a family, and you're treating them with the same respect you would treat your own family. First of all, people respond to when being treated like with honor, dignity, and respect. The second of all, I realized that this may be the only family portrait this family ever has. They've never had their picture made before. So realizing the whole context of this, then I would try to figure out ways to give them a picture of themselves, a print. And I've gone back to some of these places, and I've gone into some of these places, some of their homes, and like a picture I took, a 4x6 snapshot that we gave them, has an honored spot in their house, and that was like the only picture they had. And I'm not saying it was a great picture. I mean, everybody on this call could take it a better photograph, but it was conveying dignity to them, and they had a picture with their kids. And I'm going through, and Stanley's helping right now, the agony of digitizing thousands of images of my kids when they were little in pre-digital days. And those memories are important. That's a slice of your life. So when I'm doing personal projects, at the AP, I'd probably been fired for this, but I try to share the work when I can with the subjects to honor them and to get them to kind of buy into what, to see life through their eyes, and then to get them to buy in a little bit with what I'm trying to do. So I don't know if that contributes to the conversation or not, but it's back to kind of what Alan was talking about, Bill was talking about, the idea of lifting up, and Kerri was great about this. It's relationship. I mean, Jesus designed everything. God and Jesus designed everything around relationship. And Billy convinced me of this when we were in Haiti in 2010. We were having this discussion about you get better photographs when you understand and you know the people. Don Rutledge taught us this. I mean, all of this is relationships are key. And if you treat people with honor, dignity, and respect, they respond. And you get better stuff if your motives are to help them in some way.
Can I add to that? I think that, that's what I see even with a lot of Turkish photographers, that they have these feeds on, and I follow a lot of them because I want to engage with them, but they have a lot of photographs, but they have no relationship with the people. And I always try to write them back. I said, I'd love to hear the story. I'd love to hear who this person is, but it's just a picture of a face, or, and they may put beautiful or whatever. And I think that's my beef, is that we have this flyby journalism where we just take a picture because it's going to make me look good versus giving them dignity.
Yeah.
And my heart is to give dignity, because I think the people that I documented in the village have gotten a bad rap. They're the ones that suffer and they're a minority religion. And so they've suffered also. They've suffered over the years of being put down even in the Turkish culture versus worldwide. And so how do you give them dignity and encourage them? And so I would bring back photographs upon photographs. And once I was at the point of this project, I printed out 11 by 17, well, it was 12 by 18 with contact sheets of all my pictures. And I gave it as a gift. I bound it to the mayor of the village. And so he had every picture that was, worthy of, and so there might have been 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 pictures, but smaller, but yet they have an archive of them. And then I put them on a DVD for them. And so, but they still say, we're waiting on that book, Kerri, because it's really for them. But
I'm guilty of what you described, the drive-by photo.
Well, we all are.
And what I'm talking about is aspirational. This is something this is behavior in my past that I've not only done it, and I still see it, where I'm trying to learn from you guys and learn from the Lord and just understand this whole relationship thing. And I agree with you. What I'm talking about is aspirational, but it's huge. It is so huge to getting better work, number one, but also to filling a larger purpose, which is conveying the dignity, honor, and respect. And several people on this call have been instrumental in my life of teaching me that through the last 15 so years since I've known you.
I've been personally impressed with not the photography was never that great, but the whole concept of exploration of the guy, Brandon Stanton, who did Humans in New York. And I thought that was one of the best ways of honor to and giving dignity to people, was he took the pictures of people and then he shared them with everybody else. And that's like turning to somebody and saying, here's my friend. And then he didn't just say, here's a picture of somebody. He listened to them and asked them what they struggled with or whatever and got the story. And then when he shared the story, it just took off around the world. And it was the average person on the street that he just took time to spend, he says, around 30 minutes to 2 hours or longer, and listen to the stories. And it wasn't just a photo, it was communicating this person was worth my time to stop. And then on top of that, sharing it on Instagram. They're not only worthy of my time, I want you to meet them. And if you guys kind of get it, this is why I do this for Zoom calls. All of you I've met, and all of you I want to share with each other. And these conversations we're having have been conversations I've had individually with people, but not as a group. And I think all of you need to understand and value the community larger. And that's why I know you do, but I'm just trying to share that with you guys. So we've come to the end of another week. Next week, we're going to get Vivian in here and we'll have one more person as well. I want to thank Kerri and Amanda, especially for sharing. You both had extremely strong work, and it was neat to see your work, but also to hear about your heart and desires and what you want to do with your photography going forward. And we'll continue to pray for both of you guys. And we'll put this up online in case you missed part of it or anything. And so we'll have it later. Any last comments from anybody?
Stanley, would you mind if I close this in prayer?
Sure.
I just feel led to. Father God, thank you for this time. I thank you for each individual represented here today, as well as those others in our community who are with us right now. Father, I just pray that you'll hold them close. I pray that your hand will be on them, that you'll just guide them, direct them, lift them up, encourage them, whatever they need right now, Father. I just pray in the mighty hand of Jesus that you will be very real to each one of us, that you will bless us, and that we'll be aware of your presence. I pray you guide us, and I pray for those that you're going to put in our path, that somehow through us you can lift up, encourage, and honor those people. We just ask you to be with everybody now during this pandemic, and I pray for those who need work. I pray for work for those, whatever they need, Father, right now. I pray you'll provide it. We lift this up in the mighty, powerful name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Kerri.
Thanks, guys. It was great work.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Amanda.
you.
Wonderful.
Thanks for the prayer.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Stanley. Appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome,
Stan.
Ken. Thanks, Michael.
See everyone later.
All right.
Later.
Bye.
Everyone to Bill's house for lunch.
Okay.
Give me time to figure out what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I hear you make good sandwiches. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
So long, guys.